Hello there, I hope that you are doing well. During today's video I'm going to give you a full breakthrough of the TradingView platform and how I use it on a day-by-day basis. During this video I'm going to share with you my TradingView settings and the indicators which I use. Secondly, I'm going to give you a walkthrough of all of the core palettes which I use in order to annotate my charts. This video has been requested by many people, so it's finally time for me to give some insight into it. Since we've spent a lot of time behind the charts, it's very important that we make sure that our charts are as clean as possible. So first of all, here we're on the TradingView chart, and what you can see right here is the following. I like to use a white background for my background color, and I like to use green and black candles. The reason why is because this way I can clearly see the bullish and bearish candles. Notice that the bullish candles are annotated in green and the down candles are annotated in black. What I want you to see is that around the green candle right here, you can see that there's a black border right here. In order for you to copy these settings, what you need to do is the following. You need to go to the settings on TradingView by pressing on the chart with your left mouse click. And what you can then do is you can drop down into settings and you can go to symbol. If you go to symbol, you need to copy these settings. Where you can see that inside of the body, I first of all have this green selected to showcase the up-close candle its color. Secondly, you can see that I have the regular black selected and this black gets selected for all of the remaining boxes to be filled. Meaning you can see that the borders and the wicks are all black. The reason why is because that way you can see that we clearly have that up-close candle showcased right here. Next to that, you can see that my time zone is always put to New York time. Meaning right now this is UTC -5, but the past few months it has of course been UTC -4. But in order to make sure that you're utilizing the proper time, just follow along with New York time zone. That is basically everything which I do when it comes to the TradingView settings to showcase my candlesticks and the background color. The second option which we'll take a look at is the following. If we pay attention to the canvas right here, what you can see is that I like to use a solid background. This solid background has been put to white. The reason why is because that way you can clearly see the candles popping out beautifully and it really showcases to you the underlying order flow. Secondly, what you can decide to do is whether or not you would like to use a watermark. In my opinion, this watermark is very distracting and therefore I do not use it. You can see that they plot this watermark over the candlesticks and in my opinion it's very distracting. Therefore I do not like to use it. Next that you can see that I've selected my crosshair to be at 50% opacity right here and I like to use the dotted line. The reason why is because it's just very clean in my opinion. In order for you to be able to annotate your charts in a clean and efficient manner, what I suggest you to do is to follow along with the upcoming steps. What we can see here on the left is that we have a lot of options of tools which we can use to annotate things on the TradingView chart. First of all, what we will pay attention to is the first option right here. This option is the cursor option. Here we can select what type of cursor we would like to use. I prefer to use this cross cursor right here, and therefore what I do is I add it to my favorites. I will explain soon why I do this. When I add it to my favorites, what you see is that right here a toolbar gets shown. This toolbar can be moved around the chart as you see. Right now I only have the cross tool in there, but if we begin to add more tools to it, you begin to understand how quickly we can do our annotations because we can just press on this toolbar and then we can select what tool we would like to use and then we can move from there. And if you have multiple tools which you like to use, this is of course a very efficient step to take. If we move down to the second option then, we can see that we have a trend line right here. If I open up the menu by pressing on this arrow right here, you can see that we have a lot of lines which we can choose of. Here are the lines which I like to use. First of all, I always add the trend line to my favorites. You will see that it again gets shown right here on the toolbar. Secondly, what I add to it is the horizontal line and I add the horizontal ray. The reason why I like to utilize these lines right here is because they allow me to annotate specific liquidity pools, which we'll discuss in a bit. Next that I like to use the vertical line because the vertical line allows me to plot key times. And time is very important within my analysis, of course. If we move on to the third tool selection then, what you can see right here is that we have the opportunity to select from Fibonacci and Gann tools. What I like to do is I like to use the Fibonacci retracement right here. The reason why I like to use this tool is because this tool allows me to very easily measure premium and discount. I will share with you the settings of this tool in order to do so soon. If we move on to the next tool then, we have the patterns. I don't like to use this, but this is basically how you can create your own toolbar. I'm just going to walk you through this right now to showcase what tools I use, and you can copy me if you want to. I like to use the long and short position within my toolbar, and I like to utilize the price range as well right here. If we move on to the next step then, here we can see a variety of tools which we can use to point to specific things within the markets. And here are the most important things to utilize in my opinion. First of all, the rectangle right here is very important and I like to use this actively. Next that I like to use the arrow because it allows me to clearly showcase my anticipation for the day. But I could also utilize the path tool for this. But for this example of a toolbar, I'm just going to utilize the arrow. Next that you can utilize the highlighter if you want to, but it's not required. But the rectangle right here is the most important. If we move on to the next option then, we can see that we have text and notes. Here you can choose, for example, the text tool if you want to make chart annotations while you're backtesting and you're marking up your charts as best as possible. Please do not slack with this. Meaning you need to make sure that you annotate your charts as best as possible. There's a lot of empty area on your charts and you can utilize this to type out your thoughts. But we will get to that as well later during this video. And that's basically how I create my toolbar right here. And the reason why I like to use this toolbar is because if I would have to go into each menu all the time to select the tool which I like to use, then it of course would be a very slow process. And I'm all about efficiency and therefore this is the way I like to set up my TradingView tools. Now what you can do right here is that you can make them in the right order. This really boils down to personal preference, but I'm just going to put the rectangle right here in the beginning. And what I basically do here is I make sure that the way that I utilize these tools that are set up in the way that I like to use them on a day-by-day basis. And that's just my personal preference, but you can just sort it up like you want it to. Now that we have put the TradingView toolbar on the charts, the next step is to learn how we can annotate our charts as efficient and clean as possible. What I want you to understand is that we can make use of templates for all of the tools which we put right here in our toolbox. If we have a specific color which we like for a specific tool, or for example, a certain annotation which we use a lot, it makes sense for us to make sure that we save that as a template so that we can use it in the future more often. For me personally, I like to use, for example, this color blue for the rectangle tool to highlight the fair value gaps which I use. Here you can see that I've annotated this fair value gap in blue, and the way that I annotate it is in the following. I go to the rectangle tool and I hover over the lower end of that fair value gap and I hold Command or Control. Depends on whether or not you're on Mac or whether or not you are on Windows. When I do this, you can see that it anchors the candle, its high, to the rectangle tool, which I'm utilizing to draw. And if you look to the left right here of my screen, you can see that the magnet is also turning blue. That way, I'm very precise with annotating the lower end of that bullish fair value gap. If I then move up with my cursor to the high of the fair value gap right here, which is the low of this candle, you can see that this gets plotted. And you might be wondering, how is it possible that this bullish fair value gap immediately gets extended to the right? How is it possible that that blue box doesn't only just appear till here? If you go to the settings of this rectangle, you can see that I've turned on a very specific option, and that is extend right. If I deselect this option, you can see that only this fair value gap right here, this range gets shown. But instead of me having to manually draw it to the right like this, I can use the extend to right function right here. If I want to showcase 50% of the fair value gap, what I do is I press on the middle line right here. The middle line showcases 50% of that fair value gap and this line gets plotted. This is very important because you know that this is a key price level of any fair value gap. If we go to the core settings then, what you can see is that for this rectangle tool, I like to use this color blue right here. It's a bit of a light blue, and what I've done is I've changed the opacity to 45%. This way, I get this very clean color blue for my imbalances. For the middle line, I like to use the dashed line to make sure that I get this clean 50% level. The black of this color is immediately at 100% opacity, as you can see, and I do not use any border because if I would use a border, it would become very messy, as you can see right here, and I'm not a fan of that. The less lines on my chart, the better. Now, in order for me to save this rectangle as a template, what I can do is the following. I can click on it and I can go to the bottom left right here, where it says templates. When I click on templates, I can go to save drawing template as, and here I can give the template a name, meaning I can type out, for example, fair value gap. And when I type out fair value gap, what you will see is that when I go to my templates again, you can see that fair value gap is shown right here. So if I would draw out this box at a random place and I would just change the color for a moment so that it's another rectangle, and I would go to templates again, could select fair value gap and immediately copies the settings of this blue box which we had drawn out earlier. This is how I annotate fair value gaps. And this can of course be done for every single array which I annotate, such as bullish breakers or bearish breakers or order blocks, etc. Now the next tool which I will pay attention to with you is the trendline tool. The trendline tool is what I utilize to annotate the highs and lows which have been purged. When we annotate a key sell-side liquidity pool, what I like to do is the following. What I like to do is when this sell-side liquidity pool has been purged, I like to change it to the following. I like to change it to this letter right here, which is the letter X. The way I internalize this is through the following. Before the market took out this sell-side liquidity pool, I had it put at sell-side, meaning I know that sell-side liquidity is resting below that low. The moment that we take out that low, what I do is I change the annotation from sell-side into this X. Now I know that this sell-side liquidity has been taken out, and now I know that we can likely draw towards buy-side liquidity next. And that is how I like to utilize these templates. The way that you can set up these templates is through the following. If you draw out a trend line to the right here, and you can utilize the following option, when you hold shift on your keyboard and you extend the line to the right, you will see that this horizontal line gets drawn perfectly. If we then go to the settings of this line, we make sure that the line color is black and the opacity is 100%. Next that you can see that we have the price labels annotated. This is very important because that way we can see where the liquidity is resting. If we then go to text, what I do is I put the following text in. I put sell side in because I know that below sell side liquidity, I can anticipate a reversal to form for targeting buy side liquidity next. The size of this text is 12 right here, and I've made it bold. The text alignment is in the middle of the line and on the left side. If we then repeat the process which I've already shown for the rectangle tool, you can save this template and you can save it as, for example, sell side. Once you save it as sell side, it will appear on your templates too. If we then want to copy this X as well, we would literally just repeat the same process as we just did with the sell side tool, but we would then do it with the X of course, and we would save this template in our templates tool. Now for buy side liquidity, it's of course the same process, but then on the opposing side. Meaning I would draw out a line right here, and I would make sure that inside of that line it says the following. I put in buy side, and buy side is always annotated by green, and you can see that the size of the text is again 12. Now what you can do is that if you prefer to have the text plotted above the line, you can change it to top instead of middle. This depends on personal preference. Again, we can save this as a template, and then we have the buy side liquidity template saved within our templates. Next to that, we can save the X, which represents that the buy side liquidity pool has been taken out. Now that is basically how I've structured my trend lines. Secondly, I like to use the horizontal race. The reason why I like to use the horizontal race is because if I have, for example, a specific price level which I want to pay attention to, such as an old high from the past or let's say an old low, what I like to do is I like to annotate that high and I like to extend it to the right, for example. This way I can clearly see where the liquidity is resting. Just one line, however, is not enough for me. What I like to do is I like to just annotate whether or not it's buy side or sell side. So in this case, you can see that buy side liquidity is resting above this high and sell side liquidity is resting below this low. In order to create these templates, you can literally just follow the steps which are already outlined. The next tool which I like to use is the Fibonacci retracement tool. You can utilize the Fibonacci retracement tool for a variety of purposes. Personally, I only use it to represent premium and discount. Meaning, if I have, for example, a swing high and a swing low, what I do is I annotate from the swing high to the swing low and I plot 50%. 50% represents equilibrium of this dealing range. The way you can set this up is by going to the settings of the Fibonacci retracement tool and you can copy the following settings. You place in a 0 and a 1 and you place in a 0.5 which represents 50%. To then showcase that this is, for example, the 50% price level, what we can do is we can scroll down and on the bottom right here, we can adjust the levels to percents right here instead of values. If you prefer values, you could also do that, but again, this depends on personal preference. If we then pay attention to the next tool, which I like to use the horizontal line, and this horizontal line is simply for plotting very specific price levels. Again, for the horizontal line, you can create templates which you can use yourself. Now the vertical line comes in play. As you can see, I have vertical lines on my chart which represent the days of the week. This is an indicator which plots this for me, and I will get to that in a bit. If I would place this vertical line right here at today's 5 AM at the time of this recording, you can see that this vertical line gets plotted. This vertical line right here, its settings are as follows. What you can do is you can go to the style of this vertical line and can make sure that it's fully black and the opacity is 100%. What we then do is that we change the line type to the dotted line. That way you get this very clean vertical line. Now for the long and short position, what you can do is the following. You can place it on your chart and you can go to the settings of these tools. You can change the colors to the following if you want to exactly copy my color scheme. You can go to, first of all, this gray color right here. It's just a regular gray. You can adjust it to 20% opacity. The target color then gets adjusted to blue and you can change the opacity to 20%. The same applies for the short tool, as you can see right here. It's just, of course, the opposing. If we then pay attention to the price range tool, this is a tool which you don't really have any adjustments to be made into, except for the opacity of the color. What I like to use is I like to use this blue right here, and the opacity is usually around 20% again. If we pay attention to the arrow tool then, the arrow tool allows me to, for example, highlight a specific signature and price action. I can really make clear, okay, pay attention to this low, for example. If we go to the settings of this tool, all the adjustments which have to be made are the following. First of all, make sure that the tool is very thick, meaning I like to use very thick lines for the arrows. And you can see that the opacity is again at 100% and the line is black. If I would change the beginning of this tool to arrow, it would look like the following, where you can of course see both directions, and that's not what I want. I only want to highlight one specific signature. Then the final tool which I like to use on a day-by-day basis is the text tool. This is really not required for the majority of you. However, if you are going into backtest sessions, I highly suggest you to still put it on your toolbar and to just use it, because you are probably not going to gain the full benefit of my teachings or someone else's teachings if you're not paying attention to all of the things which you can highlight inside the markets which you see. Meaning what you can do right here is that you can type out text. For example, hi YouTube. Yes, this is the text which I've now written down. You can go to the settings of this text tool and you can change the opacity of the core. Of course, you can change it to 50% if you want to, but I just like to use it at 100%. And I can increase or decrease the size of the text. If I want to make it bigger, I change the size to 20, for example. And if I want to save it as a template, what I can do is the following. What I can do is I can save as, and then I can save this text. So hi YouTube. If I go to the templates again, then I just draw out a random text, you will see that I can find the hi YouTube right here. And that is how you can quickly copy text which you like to use on a day-by-day basis. Now, the reason why this text tool should still be on your charts is because, as you can see, there's a lot of blank space on my chart. And therefore, you can utilize this blank space to annotate your thoughts, to annotate your anticipations, to annotate what you're seeing in the markets and whatnot. And that way, you're able to just really put in the time. Because that right there shows that you're paying a lot of attention to highlighting everything that you see within the delivery of price, and you're training your eye that way. Now, if we pay attention then to the indicators which I like to use on a day-by-day basis, we can go to the top left right here, and you can see the indicators legend. If you don't have any indicators on your chart, there will not be any indicators here. However, if you do have some indicators, you'll be able to click here and the indicators will show up. As you can see, there are a few indicators which I like to use on a day-by-day basis. First of all, I pay attention to the AGFX watermark. This AGFX watermark has no real trading value, but it's just for visual pleasing purposes. As you can see right here, my name is spotted on the chart and 3 words which I hold closely every single day. This indicator can be found by going to the indicators section right here and typing out AGFX watermark. The settings in order to make it like mine are as follows. In the title you put your name, and in the subtitle you put whatever you want to put in there. If we pay attention to the second indicator which I like to use, I utilize the daily ranges divider. This daily ranges divider plots vertical lines on the midnight opening price of each new day, and you can see that it also plots what day it is. This is very important for navigating the weekly order flow, and I highly suggest you to claim access to this indicator by going to the top link in this description. The next indicator which I like to use is called the New Week Open and New Day Opening Gap indicator. What this indicator does is that it automatically highlights whether or not there's a new week opening gap present for the current week, but also for the previous weeks. This indicator allows me to clearly see where the new week opening gaps are, and it also allows you to pay attention to the new day opening gaps if you like to use them. Personally, I do not utilize new day opening gaps, so I have that setting turned off. Now, if we pay attention to the 1 minute time frame here, what you can see is that I utilize an indicator which plots these boxes around the candlesticks. These boxes represent the 90 and 30 minute cycles, as I've been teaching them on my public YouTube channel. If you do not understand how to utilize these 90 or 30 minute cycles, I would highly suggest you to check out my lectures on the topic. This indicator is called the time cycles indicator, and you can again find it in the top link of this video's description. The next indicator which I like to use is called the extended macros indicator. This indicator plots on the bottom right here of my chart horizontal lines which represent the macro windows which I use on a day-by-day basis. I highly suggest you to put this indicator on your chart and investigate the delivery which takes place during these macro windows. Now that we have discussed the indicators, the final part of this video is going to be a showcase of how I pay attention to intermarket relationship. Here we're on the hourly chart of Nasdaq and ES. On the left you can see Nasdaq and on the right you can see ES. This is very important because for intermarket relationship purposes, we pay attention to both Nasdaq as ES, and we pay attention to when the highs and lows are forming. In order to make sure that Nasdaq and ES are being showcased at the same moment in time, what you can do is you can go to the layout setup settings and you can go to the bottom right here. Please turn these settings on, where you turn on the interval, the crosshair, the time and the date range. This way you will make sure that you will get the same data for the market on the left as for the market on the right. Else you will be scrolling on the market on the left whilst the market on the right stays behind, and it's just a hassle to make sure that everything is aligned. If you copy those settings, it will be easy. What you will then do is you will pay attention to when and where Nasdaq is forming its lows relative to ES. So you can see that Nasdaq created a higher low right here relative to the previous day low, whilst ES created a lower low relative to the previous day low. That is SMT, and that confirmed the expansion which took place right here. With that being said, this video comes to an end. I hope that you found it insightful, and I hope that you were able to learn something new about how to make your TradingView process more efficient. I want to wish you all the best, and please let me know in the comments if you would like to see more explanation videos like this. Be safe!